welcome to the Nouveau podcast, the podcast that models healthy communication for men, empowering them to start the journey of self-work. Now here's your host, Thomas Pierce.
My guest this week is Kamaka Dias. He is the creator of the Hawaiiverse, which is a place for all things local and supporting local Hawaiian businesses. And he also runs the Hawaiiverse podcast, which is a podcast that promotes local Hawaiian figures, businesses, and culture, and has some raving reviews as a fellow podcaster. Some of the reviews on this show that Kamaka has created are pretty amazing. Some of them saying, bring the truth from the Hawaiian Islands, a true deep dive into the local community. Another one saying, I haven't seen much current mana'o being shared anywhere else, so it's exciting to see it here. And lastly, I love how Kamaka brings on guests that are open to talking about controversial and important issues. And with that, all the way from Hilo, Hawaii, welcome to the Nouveau podcast, Kamaka.
Hey, how's it going, Thomas? I'm going to give you your first Hawaiian lesson. So it's Kamaka.
Kamaka.
Yeah. Or Kamaka.
Thank you, man. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah. So Ka is the, and then Maka is I. So it means the I. But my middle name is Kupono, which means righteousness. So it's like the righteous I, which means the one who sees things in a good way. And a lot of Hawaiian names have meaning like that. And I like that you throw in some mana'o over there. You threw in some Hawaiian words. I appreciate it. For
sure, man. I appreciate you sharing, your culture. And that's why I wanted to chat. But just to make sure I have it again. So Kamaka or Kamaka. Okay, perfect. Cool. Kamaka. Cool, dude. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, so I went to the islands for the first time last year. And then this last time, I went again, and I was doing some reading on the history of, the illegal annexation by the United States of the islands and kind of the connection that was forged between the islands in the U.S. And I was interested to learn more about, current day culture. What does it look like? What's going on? And that's how I came across your work. So, what are you doing with the program and the podcast, and what is the work that you do at this point?
Yeah, I kind of do a bit of everything, but for Hawaiiverse, I was part of the founding crew, so I'm a founder. But two guys, they had the idea when we were in Hilo, also from Hilo. They brought me on to be like the host, the promoter, kind of just the face of Hawaiiverse when we first started in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic. So they brought me on. We started with 40 businesses in Hilo as a way to just, give back to the community. We started as a coupon directory with just 40 businesses in Hilo, kind of like a local version of Yelp and Groupon. And then we expanded. We expanded to Oahu and statewide. So now we have over 1,000 businesses in Hawaii, and we just try to do everything we can to support local. We also have an ecommerce section, which is like a local version of Amazon or Etsy. So we're basically just trying to be the number one entity in Hawaii. And then the podcast is just a branch of that, so we can focus on the local figures and share their inspiring stories with the community. Yeah, so I'm amazing. Fully on that. And then part-time, I'm a Peace Corps recruiter. I was in Madagascar for 3 years. So that's my side gig.
Awesome, man. That's incredible. And so the podcast seems, and I guess the Hawaiiverse overall seems to have a great reception because, you have, it seems like great traction with all of it. So it must be filling some kind of need or gap for the community. So what is it, on top of promoting businesses and driving revenue, that kind of thing, what do you think the deeper layer of the need that you guys are servicing with promoting the culture and the services you provide?
Yeah, I think it's really just being a voice for the people. I think especially during the pandemic, everything kind of became a little bit more skewed, where we only got our source of information from the media. And censored media, the news and mainstream media. So I think podcasts are super cool because it's free form. It's these long, in-depth conversations where you can really get to know about a person and hear their opinions, and you don't have to be afraid to express yourself. So I think what people really love about it is I bring on these local figures that are very prominent in the community, but maybe you see them in like 30-second clips on Instagram. Maybe even the politicians, you see them those like quick little debates where they can only share their thoughts for a minute, maybe 2 minutes. So when they get to sit down with me for an hour, hour and a half, and we just talk about everything, I think people really enjoy it, and it makes it more relatable. Like, oh, this person is just like me. This person goes to the beach. This person surfs just like me. This person doesn't like this or likes this just like me. So I think the thing with the Hawaiiverse podcast is it's just relatable to the local community, and I'm a native Hawaiian. I grew up speaking Hawaiian, so I get to bring that side of it to the podcast, which I don't think a lot of people really have that side. Because we have a lot of Hawaiians in Hawaii, but not everybody is super connected with culture. There's this disconnect because, like you said, there was the illegal overthrow in 1893, and then followed by that, they banned our language, so we could even speak Hawaiian in our own native land up until the 1970s, and then they, reinstated it as an official language. And I think in the 80s, they established these native Hawaiian preschools. That's the preschool that I went to, and they started the Hawaiian immersion school. So I'm super blessed that I got to, be part of the Hawaiian immersion school, learn the culture, learn everything hands-on, speak the language. So I get to share that perspective with a lot of people. And Hawaiian was a dying language. I think at one point it was less than point something of the population spoke Hawaiian. But now there's this renaissance, and I feel like I get to be like a real voice for the people, and everything we talk about is just, it's real. And
Yeah, man, it's super real. And as a host, you have that very casual, welcoming style, I would say. Even for these folks, even though they're figures in the community, maybe they've never been on a podcast to talk specifically about Hawaiian culture, for example. And you can kind of make them feel comfortable and encourage them to be their authentic selves.
Yeah, wow, I appreciate that. Yeah, I like to pride myself in being able to talk with anyone. I've lived abroad, and like I said, I lived in Madagascar, so I've had conversations in Spanish, Malagasy, Hawaiian. So I figured if I can have full conversations in those languages, I can have a conversation in English.
For sure. Yeah, man. So that one of the things that I learned even from your show that I didn't know, and I think this speaks to just how much a lack of information there's in the mainland, is saying like most mainland Americans, for example, would say Hawaii, but you say Hawaii, or with a V rather than a W. And to me, that really struck me as like a great representation of how much a lack of information there is. It's like even the name of something is important. And if all these people are saying the name wrong, it kind of points to the more underlying, not knowing the history, not knowing the first thing about a place.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up. I think that's a big thing that we talk about on the podcast, and just that I talk about with friends and family, is the lack of education on the Hawaiian Islands. And the reason I say Hawaii, I mean, sometimes I say Hawaii, it just comes out, because we've been conditioned to say that growing up, and you just hear it so often. But in the Hawaiian alphabet, it's A, E, I, O, U, He, Ke, La, Mu, Nu, Pi, Ve. So the V, or the W, is more like a V. So we say Hawaii, Hawaii. But then there's different pronunciations too. Sometimes the V could be like Y. Sometimes you say Vai, sometimes you say Wai. So there's different, I guess. I don't know if it's dialects, but just like how our kupunas, how our ancestors used to speak versus how we speak now. And then stuff like Honolulu, when people say Honolulu, and it's Honolulu.
Right.
There's a lot of things like that, but it just comes down to just that's what they hear. That when you're if you're not from here, you don't hear it all the time. If you just get your information from TV shows, movies, you're gonna hear Honolulu, you're gonna hear Oahu, Kauai, Hawaii, stuff like that. So that's why I think it's really important for people before coming here, before going to anywhere, honestly, to learn about the place that you're going, the host country, the state that you're going to. And yeah, I just think there's very little information about Hawaii and the Hawaiian history. Like, I don't know, maybe what did you learn in school about our state? And some people would even say it's not a state. Some people say it's a sovereign nation. There's all these topics to debate.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, I think the education I've received has just been what I've sought out, and I've learned the first contact was in 1820 by missionaries from the mainland. And there was this kind of gradual stripping away of rights of Hawaiians, starting with the sugar trade and kind of using that once like the business people from the mainland got a sniff of all of the potential for a cash crop of sugar, and then kind of manipulating the local government and eventually by arms forcing the queen to sign away her rights essentially. And then eventually, because of the I think it was the Spanish-American War, the location was strategic for the United States, and the president annexed it. And even there was in the early 1900s, like the U.S. government acknowledged that was an illegal move, but
yeah,
there's no rights given back.
There's the apology bill or apology act. I think Clinton signed it or something.
Yeah,
it literally was sorry we did this. That's all. Oops, my bad. Nothing happened.
Yeah,
we'll just keep all the hands and all the rights, but sorry.
For sure, man. And what kind of sparked me down this was like thinking about, okay, like, oh, what an amazing place to visit. What wouldn't it be so amazing to be able to like own a house there? And then it's like, well, actually, I don't have any rights to that. I don't know how I feel about that, as a person from the mainland, for example. So all of these, like you said, are kind of the questions. And the thing that kind of sparked me or kind of indicated to me that there is this underlying situation is the like symbols of the independence movement. So say, for example, the upside down flag, and seeing that and looking up, what does that mean?
Yeah. I think there's a huge difference between like us here and mainland America, the continent. The culture is totally different. So some people don't even realize that Hawaii is part of America. And I would go to other places and, I'll talk to people and, some people didn't really like America. So I always had like a scapegoat, like, oh no, I'm from Hawaii. We're not part of America. So then they automatically, especially, when like political stuff are going on and, all these, like tragic events. But yeah, there are people who say we are not American, we are Hawaiian, and it's valid. It's totally valid. But I for me personally, this is the hand we were dealt. Like and especially because I worked for the American government in the Peace Corps, and that was a weird, internal struggle for me, because I was supposed, so in the Peace Corps, you're supposed to promote American culture to the host country nationals. And I was in a foreign country trying to promote American culture when American culture is so foreign to me, because Hawaiian culture, the local culture here, is so different than what you guys have on the continent. If you come here, we're more influenced by Japanese culture. We take off our slippers. We eat rice. We respect our elders. We do certain things that aren't necessarily American, but because we're still under the scope of America, I think we're just automatically tied in. But I think people just need to realize that being American or living in America as a person in Hawaii, it doesn't equate to national or like ethnicity. Like I'm American by citizenship. by nationality, because we, technically we're in America. But everything I do, I wouldn't consider it to be American. My culture is Hawaiian. I'm proud to be Hawaiian. When I hear the national anthem, I don't feel patriotism. When I hear the Hawaiian national anthem, when I hear the chants and the songs, that's when I feel pride. So I think there's a lot of people who are like that, a little bit more radical, extremists, a little bit, then there's some people who, don't even care. It's like, well, you drive American cars, you eat American food, or you do all this stuff, but you're saying you're not American. And so there's this huge internal conflict, between people here, and it's ongoing, and it's I love talking about this, and I don't think this topic will ever end. I don't think there's a right answer. I don't think there's a wrong answer. There's just different opinions, different perspectives to it.
Certainly. And I would think that you have a forum to facilitate those discussions on your show, right? Because you're having local people speaking, a local audience engaging. So that could be a good, maybe host like a panel discussion.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to one day have like a live audience, a live podcast where we have different guests, and it's almost like a Q&A, or we talk about different things. I think in the future, I definitely want to do that. I think that's a great idea.
For sure, man. One of the things that drew me to your work as well is just the willingness to talk about difficult subjects. And that's one of the things that I try to promote in my show, particularly among, people on the mainland. So also white men like myself, because I feel like there's a pretty severe lack of accountability when it comes to, okay, socially, given the history of the United States, people that look like me are at the have many social advantages, many privileges. What's going to happen as far as dealing with those privileges, acting responsibly, increasing the wealth of opportunity, that kind of thing. And those are discussions that don't really happen a lot. So I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I wanted to, just have you on just to learn more about all of that and kind of the issues of the day, But a few things I picked up. So you said on an episode that you don't drink, and I found that interesting. So what are the reasons that you started that, or maybe you never drank, and what are the things that keep you consistent with that at this point?
Yeah, I never drank. I've tried, just to taste. I've never been drunk. I think the most I probably had was maybe a beer. I remember the first time I drank alcohol was sometime in high school, maybe like sophomore, junior year, and I was playing FIFA on the Xbox with my friends, and the loser had to take a shot. So I lost, and I took a shot, and I tried it, and I was thinking, wow, this tastes like gasoline. Why do people drink this? This is terrible. So after that, I was like, well, why would I drink that when I can drink an Arizona iced tea that tastes way better and is 99 cents? So, since then I was like, I never liked the taste of alcohol. And Hilo is actually one of the drunkest cities in the US. There's a poll where, Hilo is voted as one of the drunkest cities because, it's a small town. There's not a lot to do. You smoke weed, you drink, you make babies, maybe. Not everybody's like that, but, that's right. What happens in a small town, right?
Sure.
You don't have too many things to do. When you're not jumping off of waterfalls or, hanging out with your friends, you're drinking and hanging out with, your family and friends. But yeah, for me, I think I never grew up around it. My parents never really drank, so I think that was one thing. Even though I've seen friends and classmates drink or do drugs, I just never had an interest in it. I feel like I always had this natural high, this natural ability to just have fun, and I didn't feel like I needed other stimulants, and I got everything I needed from sports, from family, from friends, video games, whatever it was. I got that rush, so I never really needed anything to replicate that feeling. And as an adult, you end up realizing you save a lot of money. I love being in control of my actions at all time. I saw a lot of friends do stupid things, and I never wanted to do that. And I don't mind taking care of people. I like being the DD. My nickname is Kamaka Dias.
That's hilarious.
So
Kamaka Dias.
whenever you need me, just let me know.
That's a good friend to have, man. And I think
Pretty much,
yeah. And more so than just in the ride on a night out. I mean, I think to have an individual like you in a peer group is huge, because the people we surround ourselves with are very influential, and especially in Hilo, like you're saying, like there is a, drinking culture. To have a friend like you in the friend group is probably very impactful to your loved ones, whether or not they, ever verbalize that to you,
Mhm.
which is important.
Yeah. I think my friends just keep me around because it's me on Ubers. I don't know if they actually.
So we mentioned Hilo, and this could be a good learning lesson too for us who are not familiar. So Hilo is on the island of Hawaii, and that is
Mhm.
not where most people would go, probably, right? Because it's less populated, a bit more isolated, perhaps. So where does Hilo fit in within the context of the island of Hawaii, and where does that island fit into the wider picture of the islands as a whole?
Yeah, so Hawaii it's a chain of 8 islands. So Hawaii Island, or Big Island as we call it, um, that's the biggest island. It's more there's more land, but it's not the most populated island. The most populated island is Oahu, the island that I'm on right now, and that's where Waikiki is, right here, Honolulu. It's more touristy. It's a lot more congested. The outer islands are a little bit more country. It's not as fast paced. So Hilo, where I grew up, it's more country, very slow pace. We didn't really grow up seeing too many tourists, which was nice because it had that local family vibe to it. So even when you go from that to a place like Oahu, which is more city, to me it feels like more mainland. Because I moved to Oahu my senior year of high school, just by myself to live with my auntie to play sports at another high school over here. And just that transition alone, I was just like, wow, these people are different. They're not as mellow, or they're just, I don't know. I don't want to hate on Oahu people. I love a lot of people here, but there's definitely, you can tell the vibe, the energy of people from the outer island and from the city and from like a bigger place like this. Yeah, I'm not gonna go into detail, but yeah, there is a difference.
For sure. I think that is one thing that may be a bit more universal, just that cities kind of amplify. It feels like people need to be buzzing around, and they have to be busy and look busy and be productive. And, when we get space from that, connect with the earth more, and also have time to reflect, the priorities just change. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
For sure, man. So, and another thing I found really interesting about learning about the islands was that this whole concept of land ownership is a foreign concept, and that the land did never really belong to anyone necessarily. So, what is that culture? And also, I think as a broader topic, it seems as if the Hawaiian people are quite connected to the land. So, what is that relationship like between the land and the people?
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up. So in Hawaiian culture, we are connected to the land. Like one of the first Hawaiian was, it's the history is, there was this stillborn baby. They planted him into the ground, and he sprouted out to be a taro plant, which we call kalo. So they say like the Hawaiians come from the land, and we are part of the land, just like that. And in Hawaiian culture, we always respected the land, it was like a person, right? Like you. That's why when people litter or something, or they do something to land, it almost hurts to us. because that's part of us. And there's also Hawaiian proverbs like "He ali'i ka aina he kaua ke kanaka," which means the land is chief, man is just its servant. You know, the land was here before us. You know, we weren't given the land. We just occupy this land, this space that we're on. So it's our responsibility to take care of it, because when we take care of the land will take care of us. You know, that's why cultivation, you know, we had this whole ahu pua'a system, which is like this what is it called in English? But it's like the farmers would take care of everything, and like the fishermen would take care of everything.
Like a barter economy.
Kind of, yeah, but it's this ecosystem where everybody had their roles and responsibility, and it was sustainable, and it was efficient, it was self-efficient, where, you know, the land, the land, everybody in Mauka, like in the mountains, will take care of everybody down at the sea. And, you know, like the streams, like if we didn't take care of everything up here, the streams won't be clean, so the stream can't go into the wetlands, so it would and feed the crops, you know. So it was all like we all had our responsibility, and we all, you know, were self-sufficient, and that's like the goal, right? That's the goal. Not to have to rely on all these imports to bring us food and produce. I think about 90% of Hawaii's food is imported. So if the ship should stop one day, it probably lasts like 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And maybe that could be a cool. There's also on the show I like to talk about solutions, right? All these various problems or challenges, and the solution could be to promote maybe like traditional agriculture or community gardens, that kind of thing, to kind of lower that dependency. Also because of kind of the realities of the day, like supply chain issues. You know, that situation is probably a bit closer compared to previous to COVID. You know, they actually having that kind of challenge importing essential goods.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And it's something we've talked about on the podcast. And I think there are movements, you know, Aina movements, land movements like that. But I think it's still slowly, you know, catching momentum. And I think more people are starting to realize how important it is. And I like I said, at the end of the day, it comes to education. You know, how much knowledge can we share with the masses, and how much of that knowledge do people actually want to ingest? You know,
totally.
Not everybody's open to it.
Yes.
Everybody's really stuck in their way. We've done it like this for how many years? Why change?
Yes. Have you? So with that generation that was denied access to the language, and as a byproduct of that, the culture, have you seen a similar resistance in that age group at some points, or are there people who kind of needed some warming up to reconnect with their roots? Maybe it would be a good way to put it.
No, that's out me. I went to Hawaiian school. I had everything in front of me. Was taught Hawaiian history. You know, how to farm. Like everything was in front of me, but I didn't care about that growing up. I didn't see the importance of the language. You know, I spoke it every day. I didn't want to speak it. You know, even when I was growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, you wouldn't hear Hawaiian language around too much. So my dad only speaks Hawaiian to us since we were babies. So we'd be out in public and he'd speak Hawaiian to us, and I always remember feeling a little shame responding to him. Like I didn't want people to hear me, or like I didn't want people to think I was weird because I was speaking this language and everyone else is speaking English. But as you get older, you realize the importance of Hawaiian and the culture. So it wasn't until I left Hawaii, I studied abroad in Spain, studied abroad in Argentina, left to Madagascar, and that's when I was so intrigued by these other cultures. Like, wow, Spanish culture is so cool. Malagasy culture is so cool. And then I'd have people tell me, like, you live in Hawaii. You live where people and then I tell them I speak Hawaiian, and then they'd say, oh, well, does everybody speak Hawaiian? And then I have to think, oh no, not everybody speaks Hawaiian. It's actually very rare that you met me from Hawaii and I speak Hawaiian. And then, just having those interactions with people really made me grateful for my upbringing and everything I had. So, there's a lot of people like that. There's so many people like that are disconnected from their own roots, that as adults, that they have to really, they only get into the language or the culture. And yeah, like I said, it's an ongoing problem, and that's why having these conversations openly, it it's really good for people to hear, because they don't feel alone. you know Especially with social media, they're like, oh, Kamaka, he speaks Hawaiian, he's a super native guy. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I'm probably just like you, where I'm still learning about who I am, our culture. We're on the same level. Just because I speak Hawaiian, or I went, I have this background, doesn't make me any better than you. It's only been less than 100 years. It's less than about 50 years since we were able to speak our language again, since we were able to, practice our culture again. So, we're still trying to figure out what it's like to be Hawaiian in this modern era, you know?
Totally. And again, kudos to you for creating that space. And I think what you hit on there was this insecurity that we all have about ourselves. So let's say, and it could be someone else listening on the mainland who maybe has other heritage or identity, and say they're a first or second gen kid from other parts of the world, and maybe they can resonate with that story, of being embarrassed by their parents speaking the language, or even say thinking, oh, this other person, is so much better at the language than me. But really, no one else really cares about where you or me are at as an individual. They're worried about themselves. And I feel like that's a really big part of growing up, is kind of realizing that.
Yeah. Realizing that the world doesn't revolve around you, that spotlight effect.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
And within that, you talked a little bit about your dad, for example. So that kind of pivots over to the masculinity side of things, which is a lot of where I like to go with conversations, because as men, I think that, we definitely have certain, at least in the mainland here, certain privileges when it comes to traditional social norms, traditional gender norms, for example, of kind of being encouraged and expected to go work and make money, or, having power in the family dynamic. But also there are a lot of limitations. So there are actually a lot less boxes that men can fit into when it comes to, say, how they dress or how they act, what they do for work, who they can date. These kinds of things are all not really said, but they're encouraged and communicated through the culture. And I was, I would love to hear how you approach that, as far as, let's say in your own community, let's say there's a person you care about who maybe doesn't fit into the norm and doesn't fit into kind of what everyone expects them to be. How do you go about supporting them and kind of making them feel safe for them to be themselves?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you talk about that. I think that's super important. I love breaking down gender norms, social norms, all these things. Especially when I was in Madagascar in the Peace Corps, that was one of our goals, was women empowerment, and breaking down gender roles and gender norms. Like, women, they can do what men can do, just as well or even better. Or men can cook too. In
Yeah.
these developing countries, they're very, very old school. Like, men don't do this, men don't cook, men don't clean, they don't get water. And it's our job as Peace Corps volunteers to lead by example. They see us washing clothes, they're like, whoa, but men don't wash clothes. But oh no, men can wash clothes, women can work in the field. There's these things that we can do to inspire others, and all you have to do is lead by example. I think that's the biggest thing. For me, yeah, I never really cared about having the lifted Toyota Tacomas with a gold chain, acting all
Dude.
drinking. The drink culture, that's a huge social pressure for men.
Yep.
trying to fit in and act up. How many beers can you drink? You know, how many shots can you take? I never conformed to that. So I feel, you know, when I'm able to, you know, hang out or talk to other people and, you know, share my story with them, I think it, well, I hope that it inspires them and kind of makes them realize, like, well, we don't have to just fit into this box. You know, we can create our own path. And I think I'm just blessed with, you know, my family. My dad was a very loving dad, and I have step parents. My parents got divorced, but they're all my parents are really cool with each other. You know, we have dinner together with all my siblings. So I think it's the, you know, the environment that you grow up in. And for people who are maybe struggling with this, you know, I see kids, I see young kids just acting so dumb. Like sometimes I just want to, you know, slap them or just talk to them like, what you're doing is not in 10 years, you know, you acting this bravado, this like, you know, I just went surfing the other day and it was just me and some kids, maybe they're like middle school, high school. And I, you know, I just say hi, but I was mostly just listening to, you know, their interactions with their friends, and you know, they're kind of just like teasing each other, kind of like, you know, saying saying things that, you know, aren't very appropriate to each other, and
For sure.
kind of like they're trying to be cool, or you know, even it's like it's almost disrespectful too. Like even, you know, as an adult trying to talk to them, and you know, they're kind of rude, and I just want to be like, what you doing now? If you show aloha, if you just, you know, show love and respect, that's gonna take you so much farther than what you're doing now. And you know, but the honest truth is, you somebody could tell me that when I was growing up, and I wouldn't have listened to them. You know, somebody could have told me that, you know, what you're doing now, Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian language is so important, and I still probably wouldn't have listened to them. So I think all we can do is do the best that we can to lead by example, be the aloha we wish to see in the world. And if people follow, they follow, but everyone will have their own journey to that. You know, whether it takes them couple months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. Eventually, they'll get there. That's what I believe.
I share your optimism, although it can be hard, you know, especially after being hurt by people, right? And for me, it's just when someone who I very close to hurts me. That's when it's can be really hard to kind of hold on to that optimism. But I think you're right, and also what that kind of leads on to is just the idea that we can't change people. You know, we can
Mm-hmm.
put out the podcasts with the positive messages or supporting the local community, but you can't make anyone listen. You can't make anyone want to change. You can only offer up some tools and some positivity, and they can take it with, you know, they can run with it or not.
Yeah,
So
it's like language. You can teach language, but you can't teach an interest in language. And I taught English for 2 years in Madagascar, and I always thought that like that's just the reality. I can't, if I'm just, you know, getting so stressed out, like, oh, these kids are just not interested in learning English. They just don't want to learn. But that some people just aren't interested in that, and you have to accept that. Um, but yeah, the people who are, you know, then you know that's awesome. They excel, they succeed, and that's with anything. Yeah, I just like to, you know, relate it to things in my life, like, you know, anything is this. It comes down to interest, and that's something that you can't teach. It's just innate.
totally. And also on the masculinity topic, I think a lot of, for myself, when I think about the man I want to be, the force I want to be in my community, comes down to core values and the things that I care about and want to promote. So with you as an individual, kind of creating community, I'm sure you've thought about that too, and your core values. So for you, what are the things that drive you and are kind of your core values? And leading into that, what do you think it means to be a good man?
Yeah, honestly, honestly, kindness, aloha. I always like to use the word aloha. It's love, compassion, everything. I just feel like being a good person, that's all you have to do. You don't have to be, there's success, is subjective. If you just want to make money and you want to have all these accomplishments, that's great. But I think the most successful you can be is just being a kind person, being the kind of person that when someone talks bad about you, they have to question that. Like, really, like he was the kindest guy ever, he was so nice to me. And I feel like kindness is infectious. And when so for example, when I did my race to 50K, when I paid off my student loans in 1 year, it was all based off the idea that kindness, or everyone is inherently kind. You just need to give people the opportunity to be kind. And in 11 months, I paid off $53,000 of student loans just by going out and helping others. And I didn't charge anything. I just let them donate whatever they wanted out of the kindness of their heart. But that was just a perfect social experiment to show, like, there are nice people out there in the world. We just need to give them an opportunity to show that. So for me, my strongest core values, just kindness, aloha, and of course family. Family is everything. Growing up in Hawaii, you learn family is important. Everyone is auntie and uncle. Everyone's your cousin. Everyone's your brother, your sister. Family. There's nothing more important than family. I have it tattooed on my arm. Ohana. Yeah. So, yeah, family, kindness, love. I mean, and of course, hard work. If we want to talk more, business sides, like if you want to accomplish things, you have to work hard. You just have to. There's nothing that's going to be given to you. Maybe you come from a very wealthy family and you have things given, but I'd much rather come from nothing, work hard, earn everything, than just be given everything. Because it teaches you so much. The struggle teaches you more than success can ever teach you.
Certainly. And most anyone who's deemed successful, however someone wants to define success, and you go look at them and hear them speak about their life and how they got to that successful point, it's through failure. It's through being challenged and having core values shaken, and rattled, and having to think about it and never give up. Yeah, I agree, man. I think for me, I really hang my hat on empathy. I try to be empathetic to everyone I meet, and understand that I could be in anyone else's shoes very easily, depending on life circumstances, challenges, setbacks, and just try to, even with people who are nasty or kind of seem acidic, just to understand that at the root, we're all people, and that person who kind of got lost along the way was a kid once, and that they ultimately, everyone deserves love and respect. So that's kind of how I try to navigate. Yeah.
Yeah, but I like how you said empathy, because that's something that I realized later on in my life. I'm a very optimistic guy, but sometimes that can be off-putting to some people, because they're like, why is this guy so happy? Did he not have a hard childhood? Did he not have these struggles? But no, I've had a lot of hardships. I just embrace them. But to some people, they are dealing with trauma. They come from what could be deemed as harder than what I experienced. So I think being compassionate and being empathetic, like, okay, maybe they're not as nice because they're going through something, and that has, I've
For
experienced
sure.
that, and I had to sit down and kind of like step back, and instead of like retaliating, just choose aloha, just show them aloha, because maybe they're going through something that I don't understand. And that happens more often than we think. Not everybody is as open to talking about things, talking about their feelings, sharing, how their emotions. So yeah, I don't know. What I'm curious. What was your upbringing like, and what was your motivation for starting this podcast? Because I'm sure something probably has happened personally for you to want to start this podcast.
Yeah, man.
I don't know if you shared it before.
No, it's a great question. It was, I would say, a twofold motivation. So I grew up, both my parents were together. I have two siblings. Comfortable upbringing. It was kind of a confluence of factors that kind of shaped who I am. But grew up in New Jersey until I was in 8th grade. And then my family moved to Philadelphia, into the city. And that kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. I had some experiences. And kind of just became less sheltered, I would say. And so that kind of struck an open-mindedness chord in me, connecting with people who are very different than me, seeing more walks of life. And then my parents divorced when I was in college, and there was and this is something they both, I think, would be comfortable with me saying, is this, that, in their relationship, there wasn't the communication, right? There wasn't the identity of, okay, here are the problems, let's communicate about it, let's talk about it. And so that led to them eventually, separating, right? And so for me, that combined with just observing the behavior of the men around me in my peer group, in my age group, a lot of the same things you have said, just like having the truck, shooting guns, drinking, trying to, hook up with girls, and this kind of just having only those things be important, and not really, and also treating people poorly. And the last kind of big motivator was just the whole discussion on the mainland about civil rights and the racist history of the United States. And these things, again, all kind of prompted me, like I said earlier, thinking about the privileges I have, about how can I change? How can I be a force for change? How can I normalize more healthy discussions and behavior? Because I think that a lot of societal ills will actually be alleviated if we can teach men how to identify and manage strong emotions, and also act with responsibility. So, and that's what the podcast does.
Awesome. It's so important. I think being able to communicate these things and not be afraid to, share these things, especially for men with the whole toxic masculinity thing going on. Sometimes I just see other people and I just want to show them the bigger picture.
Totally.
I can just communicate on the other side of so many beautiful things. Yeah.
Yes. And in many areas of life. And the cool thing, I think, too, is that, like, for each one of those other sides you and I have identified, there's thousands more, in ourselves. And I think that's the beauty of kind of looking inward.
Yeah. But I think the same with me, the way you got to that place is by leaving your comfort zone, whether that was moving and even going to things that you aren't used to or you're just not comfortable with. Like your parents getting a divorce in college, that's as an adult, I didn't have to go through that. I went through it as a kid, so it's a little easier, I grew up with my step parents and all that. So it just like being put in that situation, that uncomfortable situation, yeah, it sucked, but like it probably taught you so much. And leaving, moving, you said, you grew up, born in Jersey, went to Philly, opened your eyes, you probably went to college somewhere else, and now you're gonna move to another country, right? All these are opportunities for growth. That's all it is. It
totally,
it's
dude.
amazing. But it all starts by leaving your comfort zone.
Yes, I agree, man. I think that's such a important thing to identify and push past just a little bit more, the comfort zones, and understand too that failure comes with it. Like me, I mispronounced your name. I said your name wrong in the podcast. The first, like, that is it. Like,
yeah, because I don't expect you to know everything that I know. And that's something that I learned. Like before, maybe I would just be okay with it. Like, no, I just let them keep doing that. But if I don't correct you, then you're just gonna keep doing it, and you're not gonna know. but also I shouldn't get angry because if you come to my house and you walk straight in with your shoes on, and I get so upset with you, like, oh, why are you doing it? That's so disrespectful. But maybe to you, that's not disrespectful. That's just part of your culture, you know? Maybe over there, you guys walk in the house with shoes on. Over here, we don't. So instead of getting upset at those situations, it's a great opportunity to educate. And I would hope that's what people will start doing more instead of just quickly just, reacting to those situations. Yeah. So yeah, I love it. I felt like, I already, just from us talking for that, couple minutes prior to this, I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm comfortable with Thomas. I can at least tell him that, and he'll be cool with it. He won't get offended or embarrassed that he pronounced my name incorrectly. I pronounce things incorrectly all the time.
For sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. I agree. Just in that little encapsulation of kind of what two open mindsets can do.
Yeah.
And
right there. Open mind. Yeah. Open.
Yeah. I'm a shoes off guy, dude. The street's gross.
Come to my house. You're welcome to my house.
Thank you, man. Thank you. That'd be amazing. Yeah, I remember when I learned that though.
Yeah.
It was actually a Russian friend taught me that about like the shoes, because I think maybe it wasn't always like an enforced thing, but yeah, in my spaces I like that. I think it's leveling too. The like taking off the shoes. It's kind of a human thing. It's like we're not outside, we're in a home, it's a private space, we can be comfortable and we're all on the same level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of different cultures that do that.
Totally. Awesome. Well, before we jump over to the conversation game, I do want to ask about music. I'm a music fanatic, and I do have a few, I would say, artists in the Pacifica sphere that I like, but what are your favorite artists from the islands that I can go and we can go check out as an audience?
Let's see. I used to be way more into music in college. I'm kind of out of touch, but with working with Hawaiiverse and meeting all these local business owners, local musicians, I have been able to meet some pretty good people. And I'm not sure. Well, do you know The Green? The Green
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
one of the big bands from Hawaii. But there's some more not super underground, but up and coming artists that I can tell you about. There's this guy Nick Kurosawa. He's amazing. Probably one of my favorite voices out of Hawaii.
Wow.
But he's super underground. He has a flip phone. This guy doesn't have any social media.
That's awesome.
Has an amazing voice. And, just sings amazingly. But Nick Kurosawa, Kurosawa. He's amazing. My friend Kelana, she's a 2-time Nahoku Hano award winner, which is like the local version of the Grammys. She has an amazing voice as well. But awesome. and I like these two people because they're not, what you think of Hawaii, which is just like this, kind of rootsy, kind of reggae island vibe. They're from here, but they're kind of creative. They have their own genre. Like Kilana sings R&B, and I respect that because it's almost like stepping outside of the box because you're from here. You kind of feel like you have to sing that island style music, whatever, just for people to like you. But maybe you can succeed in other genres, even though you're from here. So they're probably two of my favorite up and coming artists. And then there's some people like Kimie Minor, Paula Funga. They're all well established. Jack Johnson, The Green, all of them. Ikena Scanlon. These guys who a bit more famous, and they're just great. I could just keep listing on and on.
That's awesome.
Some OGs. Yeah, I could give you a whole list.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, that'd be great. I love, just like language think music is an expression of a culture, so it's always great to learn that way.
Yeah, definitely. There's two universal languages. I like to think it's laughter and music.
For sure.
Everybody understands that.
Yeah, you can communicate a lot with those two things.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll jump over to the discussion game. So would you like to go first or second for the question? We'll each get one question.
Okay, well, you go first so I can copy you.
Okay. Here's my question. What is my love language? The love languages are acts of service, gift giving, physical touch, quality time, or words of affirmation. For me,
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think physical touch for sure. Kendall is my partner, and we're like glued to each other. You know, like we're always holding hands and that kind of thing, which is lovely.
Use this term, opihi.
Okihi.
Use that term. Opihi.
Opihi. Okay.
Opihi. It's like this shell. This like you can eat it, but they stick to the rocks. I don't know if you ever seen like these they stick to the rocks. So when somebody's like really clingy or whatever, you say opihi, like really stuck together.
For sure.
So you two are opihi.
We are definitely opihi. That's awesome. Thank you, man. Yeah. I think after that, words of affirmation, I like, I think that's kind of like the ego side, telling me how great I am kind of thing. Okay. Here's your question.
What are you currently looking forward to? What am I currently looking forward to? Honestly, super simple. I had COVID a couple weeks ago. Then I hurt my knee playing soccer. So I'm just really looking forward to getting back into surfing. I love surfing, just being able to go in the water and be away from the distractions, because I'm very involved on social media and using technology all the time. So when I surf, it's the one time out of my entire day where I'm disconnected. I'm not on my phone. So I always look forward to that, just being in the water. So maybe like leisurely, that's what I'm looking forward to. Business side, looking forward to just taking Hawaiiverse to the next level, just being able to grow our platform so big so that we can really have an impact on the local community and really shift people's mindset to supporting local, with our website and the podcast. So those are the things I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Well, I love the water too, and I think it's awesome what you're doing. And I think the community response is indicative of how well you're doing it, and also the need it's filling. So, good luck. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories and your lessons and a bit of the culture, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out and being open-minded and wanting to talk about these things and share it with a broader audience. We really appreciate that.
Beautiful.
And if you're in Hawaii, let me know. We can go surf.
Oh, that would be a dream. I will. Thank you. Thanks, man. Have a great day.
All right. See ya.